This video lecture is on marketing segmentation, targeting, and positioning, which is a three-part process consisting of market segmentation, where we take our market and we kind of slice it into different groups, and we make different market segments out of it. And then we choose which of those market segments we wish to target, and then position our product to optimize that market segment, those market segments which we've chosen to pursue. Market segmentation is the dividing of a market into distinct groups with distinct needs, characteristics, or behaviors which might require separate products or separate marketing mixes. And there are generally four methods to segment a market, but to be quite honest, we often use a combination of these four, and that includes geographic segmentation, demographic segmentation, psychographic segmentation, and behavioral segmentation. And I will get into each of these in much more depth presently. Geographic segmentation is probably the easiest to understand. It's where do people live, what world region or what country, which will make a lot of sense, in terms of what language we communicate in, and what types of products that consumers would respond well to. It may also be more local, state, county, or city. It also may be according to metropolitan size, specifically population density, where it be urban, suburban, or rural. For instance, if we were selling lawn tractors, that is, not farm equipment, but lawn tractors which are basically lawnmowers that you can sit on and ride around on. The way we would approach each area, each population density area, urban, suburban, or rural, would be very different. Probably the one area that would be most potent for sales would be suburban areas, where there are those neighborhoods or towns where there are large lawns, where the people are wealthy enough to afford a lawn tractor as opposed to a push mower. And that would probably be the most desirable market segment. And you would probably sell these lawn tractors at places like Home Depot or other types of places where these products are sold. Where in a rural area, you have people with lawns, but the lawns are maybe further away apart because they're in rural areas. And there you might sell these lawn tractors at farm supply stores or farm equipment stores. And in urban areas, people don't think, well, you would sell this type of product there, but if you think about, well, residents wouldn't probably need it because they're in a high density area, but most major cities do have fairly large parks, and therefore having a lawn tractor would be appropriate. So essentially, you'd have a different approach to each area. So first you need to slice or segment the market so you can approach them differently. Another big factor would be, of course, climate. We know people in warm climates or hot climates require different types of products than people who are in colder climates, which makes a lot of sense. Next, we have demographic segmentation. And demographics are, basically we're looking at various attributes of people, things such as their age, are they teens, seniors, so forth. What gender are they? What ethnic groups do they belong to? Things like religion, family life cycle stage, which is closely related to age, but not completely. For instance, we start out as children, and then we become single adults. Most of us couple up and often getting married. Then there are, the addition of children at various ages. Certainly, my life as a father of a toddler was very different than my life as the father of a teenager. And then, of course, there's the empty nesters, when children leave the house and There are no children in the house anymore, but just an older couple. There's also another group called the boomerangers, where some of these children actually come back for various reasons. For instance, my brother and I are only a couple years apart in age, but yet we're in very different stages of our family life cycle. And so there's a correlation to age, but it's not completely tied to it. Also, we have what sort of household type are people living in? There is the traditional, what's called the nuclear family, mother, father, 2.3 kids, which was the average for quite a while. I always felt sorry for the 0.3 kid, but there you go. Now, since there have been a number of societal changes, the increase in divorce, the acceptance of same-sex couples, so now we have single head of households, and we have blended families, we have same-sex households. So we also have to look at the type of household they live in. Also, what are people's income levels, and to a certain extent, expenditure patterns. What occupation do they have? Are they white collar, blue collar, or maybe a little bit more specific than that? What education level do people have, and what types of education? That may be appropriate depending upon which product you're talking about, as well as disability or handicap status. And of course, sexual orientation or even sexual identity. Demographic segmentation is probably the most commonly used type of segmentation, mainly because it's the easiest. You or I could look at a person and actually check off some of the boxes here. We could probably judge their approximate age, certainly their gender, maybe their ethnic group. And then if we simply ask a few questions, we can probably answer all of these fairly easily. So demographic segmentation is quite commonly used, although not exclusively, which of course brings us to the next group, behavioral segmentation. And this is where we're actually looking at how does a consumer interact with a product and any other behaviors they might have. So for instance, in terms of products, how do they use product? What kind of occasions do they use the product for? Is it a regular occasion or a special occasion? For instance, if we look at product category of champagne, when do people consume champagne? Well, the most likely date, the day when the most amount of champagne is consumed is New Year's Day, just after midnight. I think you're all familiar with that tradition. And other than that, it's other special occasions, weddings and anniversaries and other celebratory events. There are, of course, some people, not a lot, a very small market segment, that actually drink it on a more regular basis. I actually knew a woman who fell into this category. She usually kept a few bottles of champagne in her freezer, mainly because it didn't freeze, but it got it very cold. And it didn't take much to get her to pull out a bottle of champagne. But that's unusual. Now, if you look at other product categories, let's say beer. Beer is probably consumed both for special occasions and regular occasions. There are different people who will consume it at different, for special occasions or on a much more regular basis. And so we might want to look at those different segments as well. Also, what benefits are derived from the product? In a previous lecture, I talked about the difference between features and benefits. And benefits, again, are in the mind of the consumer. Let's take one product, Arm & Hammer baking soda. And if I were to ask you what is that used for, you're probably fairly smart and would figure out baking. It's in the name, baking soda. Baking soda is used for by people who bake from scratch for the most part. For instance, my late mother-in-law was a great baker, great cook. She made everything from scratch. Great. My mother, on the other hand, not so much. If she had to make a cake, she'd probably grab a box of Duncan Hines cake mix and mix it up. She was not so much a bake from scratch kind of person, although she did occasionally. But the point is that it's not everyone uses the product in the same way, but also they derive different benefits. For people who bake from scratch, baking soda is an essential ingredient for certain recipes. However, there is a trend away from baking from scratch. More people want convenience foods. Think of all the microwavable products. Things like Hot Pockets. So there is this desire for convenience foods that do not require a lot of preparation. This, of course, puts a lot of pressure on Arm & Hammer to figure out how to sell more baking soda in a market that's shrinking. Well, they found that other people will use Arm & Hammer baking soda for other things, such as deodorizing their refrigerator. In fact, years ago, they did a campaign called, I forget what it was called, but basically they said, deodorize your refrigerator with all those smells, the fish and other horrible smells that might be in your refrigerator, and you need a new box every 30 days. Whether you actually need it every 30 days or not, I don't know. But the idea is that those people were using it for something completely different. They were using it to deodorize their refrigerator. And Arm & Hammer baking soda is now used for other things as well, deodorizing, cleaning. And the company has made alternative products based on its Arm & Hammer baking soda brand, toothpaste and other cleaners. So they realized that certain people had focused on different benefits. Some baking from scratch, others deodorizing, others cleaning, and they actually have looked at these different market segments and have acted accordingly. And we'll talk more about targeting later. It might also be you might look at the user status. Are they who are the current users of the product? There may also be people who have never used the product. Maybe you want to target them later, or people who may be lapsed users. And there occasionally you'll see campaigns for people who used to use the product and for some reason don't anymore. So that's something we might want to look at. Also, user rates. How often do people use this product? And you can, and some campaigns will actually be focused on trying to increase the user rates. But going back to, we talked for a moment about beer. There are people who drink beer like it's a special occasion. There's some people who drink it every day, maybe every day with dinner or after work. Other people who will only drink it, in social occasions. Anyway, so we look at the user rates. How much do people actually use? And different groups will use different amounts. So, and also how loyal are they? Some people are very loyal to specific brands. Other people will take what's cheapest or whatever is available. So we want to look at that perhaps. And the last segmentation method is psychographic. Obviously, this is about people's attitudes and beliefs. It could be about attitudes and beliefs in general, or attitudes and belief about a particular product category. What do you believe about that category? And there are, we can get into that into various ways, but we also look at people's lifestyles, and this is more how do they think about how they live. And often you will see lifestyles portrayed in various advertising campaigns because they are targeting a certain type of person who at least believes that they have a certain lifestyle or desires that type of lifestyle. And also, things like personality and, are they compulsive, gregarious, introverted, or extroverted? And sometimes certain products will be targeted towards certain people like that. So, So anyway, I'll go back here for a second. So geographic, demographic, behavioral, and psychographic. And in many times people will construct profiles of market segments that will be combinations of these. Let's say, for instance, people who are 18 to 25 years old who live in urban areas, who have certain attitudes about a certain type of product. And so you'll see these profiles develop. So we look at the market overall and divide it up into groups. This also applies not only to consumers, but also to businesses. What industry, if we're selling a certain business product, what industry is a company in? What size are they? Where are they located? That might indicate whether they would be a desirable customer for our product or not. Any other operating variables they may have, such as what technology are they using? Are they using PC? Are they using Mac? Are they using an older technology or a new technology? What's their user status? What are their capabilities? Are they able to use whatever product you are selling? Do they have that capability? What are their purchasing approaches? How do they buy things? Do they do bids? Are they more impulse buyers? That sort of thing. Other situational factors, such as urgency. When they need to buy, do they need to buy quickly? Or again, do they have a longer range? And any specific applications or size of orders. There's all sorts of factors that companies selling business products might look at. So, and also, what are the personal characteristics of the people who are doing the buying? And there's something to be said by having a buyer-seller similarity. And often, if you're selling to a particular group, it's generally good to have maybe people who are of that group, part of your company, part of your sales force. For instance, I worked for a company that sold products to cattle ranchers. Now, I'm not a cattle rancher. I was born in New York City. I wouldn't call myself a city slicker, but that's not my, I'm not like those people. I've never lived on a ranch. But many of the people I worked with, my coworkers, did come from that culture. And many, especially the sales force. And so they could relate well to those people. What personal characteristics are there? And when you look at the people in the company, what kind of people are they? What are their psychographics? What are their attitudes towards risk? What are their attitudes towards loyalty? So this is a little bit more complicated because you're dealing with companies, but also the people within the company. So there's a lot of variables to look at. Now, it's great to have all these methods to segment a market. However, what should guide us, and how should we actually divide up a group? For instance, is the group that we're talking about measurable? Can we see how many there are? What the size of that group is? What is their purchasing power? You might see a group of people who might desire the product, and it might be a large number of them, but maybe they just don't have the purchasing power. So we want to be able to measure them, and they should be of some reasonable size. Are they accessible to you? That's an issue. Are they reachable through promotion? I was working on one product where that was a little bit of an issue. I used to work on a product called GastroGuard. GastroGuard is an anti-ulcer medication for horses. In a previous lecture, we may have spoken about who the key decision makers are. We talked about key decision makers and influencers and so forth. For horses, the key decision maker, at least on medication, is not the owner. It's actually the equine veterinarian, the horse doctor. And this was a problem because, unlike cat and dog veterinarians, the equine veterinarian doesn't sit in an office. They don't have office hours. They're actually often in their truck driving from farm to farm or racetrack to farm and back and forth. And so they were actually difficult to get a hold of. And we finally figured out, we knew where they would be at one part of the day, and that would be early in the morning. And early in the morning, they would go to the racetrack to look at the horses having their early morning workouts. And so we arranged for promotional breakfast. We set up breakfast, and then we had our technical people make a presentation to these veterinarians. It would have been very difficult to sell to them if we weren't able to access them. And so that's something you want to look at. How accessible are the various market segments? Are they substantial enough? Are there enough of them of sufficient size to warrant marketing activities? Are they differentiable? That is, can we distinguish them? Do they react differently? We can look at all those different methods for market segmentation and apply them, but are they actually important? For instance, we could divide people up into two types of groups: people who are left-handed and people who are right-handed. And for most products, it wouldn't make any difference. They won't react differently. There are, however, a few product categories where they would. Things like musical instruments, like a guitar. You can be left-handed or right-handed. Baseball gloves, scissors. These are people who are left-handed. Most people are right-handed, but about 10% of the population is left-handed. And those people actually want products that are left-handed to make them easy for them. In other product categories, in other areas, for instance, do married women and single women react differently would they have different attitudes towards your product? Would it make a difference? In some cases, yes. In some cases, no. So there has to be some difference the way they would react to your product or interact with your product. They have to react differently. So otherwise, there's no point in making them a separate market segment. And is it actionable? Do you actually have the ability to execute separate marketing plans for those segments? If you don't, you can still divide them up, but it doesn't make much sense if you can't execute different marketing plans for the different groups. Admittedly, you're not going to go after all market segments. You're going to choose which segments to go after. And do you have the resources? And if you don't, it might be better just to go after one market segment. We'll talk about that when we talk about market targeting. Which brings us into our next segment. The target market consists of buyers who share a common need and characteristics that the company decides to serve. So you've looked at all the market segments, all these different groups, and you've decided there's one group or two groups that you want to go after. So you've decided to select them and go after them. And when you're evaluating these segments, look at, what size they are, what's called structural attractiveness, what's the level of competition? Do you have competitors who are already going after those groups? If you do have heavy competition, it might be better instead to choose a different market segment to target instead of one that you already have heavy competition for. Also, are there substitute products for that market segment? Are there things that they can easily access that would essentially be competitors to you? Also, what's the power of the buyers and suppliers? Sometimes it's better to go after a market that where the buyers don't have a lot of power, and you're offering something that they want, where another group may not want it as much. Also, you have to look at what the company objectives are for your company. In a previous lecture, we talked about the 3 C's, and what does your company do? Who are your company's customers? Does the market segment that you're picking align with the market segments that you're already serving, or the type of people? If you're going after a completely different market segment that you've never served before, you need to be careful, you need to be thorough, if you don't have the experience with dealing with that, and you have to deal with that. Anyway, and there are various general approaches that you can take with targeting. And the first is sort of not targeting, or I shouldn't say not targeting, but not differentiating. It's called undifferentiated marketing or mass marketing. Mass marketing really got a boost in the 1950s and 60s with the invention of a new communication tool called television. For the very first time, a single ad could reach millions of people. The trouble is that everyone would see the same ad. You couldn't differentiate them. And the 1950s and 60s were an era I call the era of the ER words. Products were brighter, whiter, stronger, longer, something. They talked about the product, and they couldn't really talk too much about the customer unless they were definitely after a particular market segment and not interested in others. And so those ads were kind of vanilla in their approach. They didn't, they couldn't differentiate because very different types of people, all different market segments, would see the same ad. So, but we can now differentiate. We've always been able to differentiate in, let's say, print media. Different magazines and different newspapers went to different types of people. But now with television, when I say in the 50s and 60s, there were only 3 networks, only 3 channels to choose from. Yeah, there was some minor, local channels, and yes, there was PBS, but it was ABC, CBS, and NBC, and that was it. Now, of course, we have all these cable channels to choose from, ASPN and the Discovery Channel and the food channels and so forth and so on. In addition, of course, we have all websites throughout the internet, so we can go after different market segments. In fact, we can put one ad on one channel or one website and put a different ad on another channel or website. So it allows us to go after these different market segments, more than one, and to be able to alter our position for each one of them. We also have niche marketing. This is where you're going after a very small market segment that has generally been underserved by competitors. And even drill down even further, we're getting smaller and smaller into micro marketing. And that has a number of segments. The first is probably the most obvious: local marketing, where let's say a local store, a local business, a local restaurant would, market very locally. Then, of course, individual marketing, where our market segment consists of one person. And this is the type of business that it would create something custom for somebody. Like a tailor who would make a suit for a man, or a dressmaker that would make a unique dress for a woman. I think in particular wedding dresses, because women like to have many women, not all, like to have a unique dress. So, for instance, I know of women who have gone out and bought dresses in stores, but then take it to a dressmaker to customize it just a little bit to make it their own. A tailor will, of course, tailor the suit to the man or to a woman, so it just fits them, and it's to their taste, the right, the fabric, the cut, that sort of thing, the buttons. I believe Rolls-Royce does that with the Rolls-Royce Phantom. You can actually have a car custom made for you. Very expensive, and it takes about 9 months to do, but you can choose the finish, you can choose the wood on the dashboard, and all sorts of features, and they really do custom make it for you. Probably one of the most famous was John Lennon's Rolls-Royce which he had them make it white with paintings of roses with green stems on it, all over it. And you can probably look that up on the internet somewhere. And so a lot of companies will custom make things. But of course, that's an expensive proposition for the consumer or for the customer. So, but then we also have mass customization, where we're taking the individual marketing, but we're repeating it on a mass scale. And this has been enabled primarily by technology, specifically things like computers and databases and the internet, new fabrication methods, things like 3D printing, digital printing. Digital printing to me is an amazing technology. For instance, if you wanted to have, let's say, a book printed up, or anything printed up, most of the expense would be in the setup, setting up the presses and all the plates and everything. Now with digital printing, it can, and actually most of the cost is not the paper and the ink, although that can be substantial with a long run. But you would only do it to have a long run because the setup costs are so much. Now with digital printing, the setup costs are quite minimal. And you can actually, if you decide you wanted to write a book, you could have one copy printed up for not much more than having two print, per unit. In fact, at a very comparable price, where previously, if you wanted a book at a reasonable price, you'd have to print, thousands of copies. There are companies, well, actually, another example of that would be, for instance, I bought a computer on Dell years ago, and I went on the website, and basically I got to pick customize it considerably. Like, what kind of CD-ROM, how much RAM memory do I want? How fast do I want the chips to be? What kind of accelerator card or motherboard, and all these choices. And there were so many choices, it was amazing. And I realized they couldn't possibly have every version, every permutation in stock. And what they were doing is they were basically, somebody on the other end would go and pull all the parts, put it in a basket, send it down the assembly line for someone else to put it together, and then they'd ship it out to me. Now, of course, I'm sure a lot of that is done with robots, but the point is that computer was custom built for me. Now, I'm sure a few other people had the same configuration, but mass customization is kind of a modern miracle. And technologies, and for another example is with certain, I think with Nike, you can have on a certain site, you can actually custom design your own sneakers. And these were things that were impossible, decades ago. But mass customization is definitely a major trend, and it allows us to target people, to allow personalization of choice, products, which is really quite amazing. And finally, we get to our last segment, which is product positioning. After we've divided our market up into segments, we've chosen those segments we've decided to serve. Now we have to position our product for those target markets, or market segments, target market segments. Positioning is the way the product is defined by consumers. It's very important. It's the way the consumer defines it. And the consumer will position products with or without the help of marketers. You think about various products. You have certain ideas about them. This is a good product, this is a bad product, this is a sexy product, this is a cool product, this is an old product, whatever it is you have. And since they'll do it themselves, we really don't want consumers to position products themselves. We want to help them do it. We want them to think of our products in a certain way. What we definitely don't want to do is to allow our competitors to position our products for the consumer, because they're not going to do it in a complementary fashion. So the best positioning depends upon choosing the best competitive advantage. What aspect of our product, what feature or benefit actually compares best to the competition? And we do this by focusing on what's called the unique selling proposition. What is it that our product does best? And we have to push that. Now, it may not be the core function of the product. Maybe it's something, maybe it's convenience, maybe it's economy, maybe it's something else. Maybe it's ability to be customized, whatever it is. And every product has a unique selling proposition, or at least it should. For instance, Crest toothpaste pushed anti-cavity for a very long time, and they still do to a certain extent. Growing up, I always heard about Crest and how it would prevent me from having cavities, and that was the big fear. I mean, more recently, thanks to a number of health changes, for instance, things like the fluoridating of the water and other things, the cavities are not as much of a big deal. But growing up, for me, that was a big thing. And Crest, I wanted Crest because I didn't want to have cavities. If you've ever had to have a cavity drilled, it's not pleasant. So there's that. Walmart, their unique selling proposition is low prices. That's the part of their slogan: everyday low prices. That's what they push. They'll give you those same products, but at lower prices. Volvo pushed safety. Now, this is kind of an interesting case. For a long time, there's a lot of cars out there. Some are sexy cars, some are high performance cars. They all sorts of different types of cars. Volvo chose safety as their hallmark. That was what they were, the safe car. They developed the whole concept of the safety cage. Basically making the cabin of the car super strong. So if you're in an accident, you'll be much safer. So if you're in an accident, you want to be in a Volvo. Of course, nobody wants to be in an accident, but there you go. And what's interesting is the baby boomers, when they started getting older and they started having families, many of them gravitated towards Volvo because they became very concerned, especially when they had children. They wanted their children safe, and so they wanted to put them in Volvos. And Volvo is not the sexy car. It's not the stylish car. They're all kind of boxy. But if you wanted your child safe, or you wanted to be safe, Volvo was the car for you. If they tried to be the sexy car, or they tried to be the high performance car, they would not have fared very well, because there were already other brands trying to hold that position. You want to pick a product positioning that there probably isn't a lot of competition for, or one that you can dominate. If you're trying to compete with somebody for the same product positioning, that's a difficult undertaking, especially if they already have established that. And you kind of want to stick to your own position. Choose your positioning carefully, because you need to build it up over time. And I'm going to give you a good example here. If I were to ask you, I'm thinking I'm hungry, I want a sandwich, but I want to eat healthy. So I don't want to go to a McDonald's where I get a greasy burger. I want something healthy. Where would I go? And many of you might suggest Subway. Subway has positioned themselves as the healthy alternative to fast food. Eat fresh, all that, and that worked very well for them. They had a spokesperson who, his name was Jared. He supposedly, this, don't have any reason to not believe this, but apparently he ate a diet of Subway, and he was a very heavy gentleman, and he kind of lost a lot of weight, and so they hired him to be their spokesperson. And he used to go around with these big pants, I mean, really big pants. And he said apparently he lost a lot of weight on the Subway diet. And they used him for a while, but then he kind of went away. Then Subway started to get a competitor. Well, they started to get a cut into their market share. The sandwich area, not so much. They didn't do burgers, but and there was this new competitor on the horizon that was focusing on meat, how much meat they had in their sandwiches, and that was called Quiznos. Quiznos became very successful very quickly, and Subway got worried. They got very nervous. Quiznos was definitely hurting them, so they decided they were going to talk more about the meat on their sandwiches. They have, as they start adding some meat, some more meat than the usual. And that actually was a disaster for them because they were leaving their core position, which was eating healthy and trying to, more meat doesn't equal more healthier. And what is happening is they were muddling up their positioning. And they kind of lost their, and what they did is they went back to their Eat Fresh. They got Jared back, by the way, with his giant pants. And eventually that things got back to normal. And they let Jared go again, which is good because apparently Jared turned out to be a pedophile. Luckily, they didn't discover that while he was actually being a spokesperson for Subway. Always be careful. I'm not a big fan of celebrity endorsers because often celebrities have baggage. There is a tendency, or a temptation, for some people to try to increase the number of product claims. Say that try to be more than one thing. There is only so much mental shelf space with products. People only have time to think really one thing about a product because they're busy. They have lots of things they're thinking of, and it's just easy to think of a product as being one thing. I have worked with product managers who have tried to add more product claims, and what that does, it actually dilutes the message. For instance, with Subway, they tried to be the Eat Fresh and we've got more meat things. Well, you can't be two things, and actually that risks disbelief. How can you be the healthier alternative if we're also having more meat? It just didn't work. And it actually created a loss of clear positioning. Be one thing. You can't be everything to everyone. You can't even be many things. Be one thing. At least in your primary messaging and how you're positioning yourself with to the general public, to your market. We do need to, with our unique selling proposition, we do want to differentiate ourselves from the competitors. Primarily, we would love to be able to have product differentiation, to be able to differentiate ourselves in some significant way through our features and benefits, our unique offerings. But this is a challenge. It's a challenge in that our competitors, if we've really succeeded, our competitors can imitate us. And sometimes, unless you have a patent, it's really difficult to have a unique offering. Certainly try to do it, but it's okay. We have other alternatives. For instance, you can do service differentiation, and as service may be a delivery, associated services like tech support, or convenience. For instance, when I started my own consulting company, I hired an IT consultant to help me with my computer and virus protection, that sort of thing. And he recommended a product, and he said basically it's the same. It's a very similar product to what Microsoft is offering. And I asked, well, why don't we just go with the Microsoft product? And he said, well, this is just as good, but if I have a technical question, I can call up the company. The company has great customer service. Microsoft didn't have the kind of personalized customer service that he wanted. So it was that associated service. It wasn't the product itself that was better. It was the support services that were better. So there is a way to differentiate yourself with service. And this in channel, and also with channel differentiation, it's the way you obtain the product. And sometimes that's That's really important. For instance, I'll give you a couple examples here, and one kind of falls into the category of service differentiation. Some things blend. Enterprise rent-a-car. If I were to ask you what the top rental car company is, many of you would say Hertz. And actually, number two is Avis. And somewhere below that falls Enterprise. But Enterprise differentiates itself in an interesting way. If you go to the airport, if you're traveling, and that's where a lot of the rental car rentals take place at the airport, Hertz is there up front. They always get the best position. Enterprise is there too, but people don't usually run to Enterprise. Where Enterprise differentiates itself is actually away from the airport. If you've had difficulty with a car, let's say you have to go to the mechanic, and you have to leave your car there for more than a few hours, you may need to get a substitute car. For instance, just the other day, my wife had an automobile accident. Somebody actually backed up into her, damaged her fender. She will be making an appointment. She is making an appointment with a mechanic not a mechanic, a body shop to fix the fender. And because it'll take a few days, she will be getting a rental car. Well, I think most every auto body shop, every mechanic has the nearest Enterprise rental car place, the telephone for them, because it makes their job so much easier. If somebody drops off their car, particularly if it's an accident and the car is towed there, they still need transportation to get someplace. So they'll just give the number to, in fact, let them use their phone to call Enterprise Rent-A-Car, and Enterprise will actually come pick you up. They're making their product convenient. You don't have to go find their shop, their location. They will come and pick you up, bring you back to their location, fill out the paperwork, and then you get to drive away with a car. And so it's the convenience, and it's the way you obtain the product. Another example for channel differentiation, one of my favorite products is Trails End Popcorn. Now, Trails End Popcorn is a really good, they have a nice line of popcorn products. I'm particularly partial to the dark chocolate covered popcorn. What's really special about Trails End is that they're distributed as a fundraiser. The doorbell rings, you go to the door, and there's a cute little Boy Scout or Cub Scout saying, "Hey, mister, would you like to buy some popcorn?" And of course, a lot of people like to support children's, charities. Some people, I know, particularly after 9/11, there was a lot of that, and a lot of support for Boy Scouts. Even though Boy Scouts had nothing to do with 9/11, it felt like they were supporting troops. It's kind of a funny thing, but Trails End Popcorn, that's how Trails End Popcorn is distributed. And people buy it because they're not simply buying the popcorn, they're supporting their community. In fact, I've heard more than one person say, "I can't eat popcorn. I've got dentures. I can't eat popcorn, but I'll buy some for you," or all, and it's kind of funny. They won't eat the product, but they'll still buy it because what they're really doing is they're supporting the community. And I thought that's an interesting approach and a very unusual differentiation. You don't have to go to the store. You don't have to go on the computer. It comes to you. And you can, they have popcorn they bring with them, but you can also order the other types, which they'll come back and bring to you. So these are all very good ways to differentiate your product, if you can. If you can't, you still have another card you can play, and that is image differentiation. Every brand has its own personality. Excuse me. It has its own, feel to it. For instance, let's take two products that are essentially the same, Coke and Pepsi. But Coke and Pepsi have different personalities. Coca-Cola is kind of an Americana brand. It's fun, it's warm, it's fuzzy, um, it's family. Pepsi is a little bit more hip, a little bit more contemporary. Pepsi is often represented by very top and hip and trendy stars. At various times they've had Beyonce and Britney Spears, and earlier on they had Madonna and Michael Jackson, and even go back to the 80s, they had Michael J. Fox, who at the time was at the top of the celebrity list. Whereas again, Coca-Cola is warm and fuzzy, and so completely different images. Think about certain products and the image they have. Think about Apple or Disney or McDonald's. They have certain images, certain personalities, and you might be able to differentiate yourself that way. So is your brand hip? Is it serious? Is it cool? Is it intellectual? Whatever it is. It's very much you try to give your brand a personality, and that's often how you differentiate it. So let's take a look at these two ads just so show you differentiated marketing. This is an ad for the Crest Spin Brush Pro toothbrush. And if you can't read it, the headline says, "Get a dentist cleaning twice a year, have a dentist clean feeling twice a day." And I want you to think about this for a moment. Who is this ad targeted towards? Well, obviously people who brush their teeth. Okay, can we narrow it down? Well, I'd say it's people who care about their dental hygiene. Have a dentist cleaning twice a day, have a dentist clean feeling have a dentist cleaning twice a year, have a dentist clean feeling twice a day. This is written for somebody who's really in touch with the whole dentist visit process. For instance, if I take good care of my teeth, my dentist tells me I do. But when I go to the dentist and have a cleaning, I don't want to eat for a couple hours because I know my teeth will never feel quite as clean, as when the dentist does it. This is for people who really care about their dental care. Maybe for people who have had, a tooth extraction or a root canal or crown, or they've had or maybe a lot of cavities. This is for people who really care about their dental health, adults essentially. Well, I don't even have to ask you what target market is for this one. It's obviously for children. Dora is a very popular kids cartoon, and you can see it's very colorful. The product itself has Dora on it, so I'm sure there's a licensing deal in there. But there's also another very important difference. Look at the brushes, the tip of the brushes. On the left, for an adult, it's more of a standard size toothbrush, bristle brush. For the one on the right, for the child, it's actually a much smaller brush. That's actually a very important difference. The target market is children. Children have smaller mouths. You have to make a different product. It's not just about making different ads. You actually make a different product for the different market segments. And product is a part of the marketing mix. You have to adjust the marketing mix. In this case, we see two examples. Two branches where we've changed the product and we've changed the promotion. I don't know if there's any what the price difference is, or I don't know if it's relevant, or even the distribution, but there's certainly been a change in the product and a change in the promotion to appeal to that target market. Here we have a perceptual map, and this is what do people think of certain brands relative to each other, and you can use many dimensions here. I've tried to keep it simple and use two dimensions. Price, how much does in this case automobiles, how much do they cost, and what is not necessarily the quality but the perceived quality relative to each other. Now, Honda and Toyota are generally considered to be good brands. They're kind of mid, they're not too expensive, not too cheap. They're reasonable quality. That's fine. Meanwhile, we see Kia and Hyundai. Now, I'm not saying Kia and Hyundai are bad cars, but they're perceived not to have the same quality as Toyota and Honda. Not quite to their level, and they're also cheaper overall. There, of course, in the upper right, we of course see Mercedes, and to its left, Lexus. And generally, you're going to see this sort of angle, the bottom left up to top right. You're not going to see anything in the upper left quadrant because high quality car that's low price doesn't work out very well, because price is actually a signal of quality. So it's all sort of on this positive slope direction. Yet, what's going on with Jaguar? Jaguar is one of the most expensive ones, but yet it's lower quality, perceived as having lower quality than Mercedes and Lexus. What gives with Jaguar? Well, I'm only using two dimensions here. Jaguar has had a long history of being a car that breaks down a lot. It's not considered a high quality engineered car. I think they've improved more in recent years, but still, the joke was, if you have a Jaguar, you also need another car, because for when your car breaks down. There's an old joke about Ford, that Ford stands for fix or repair daily, which is kind of unfair, but it kind of did apply to a little bit to Jaguar. So why would anyone buy a Jaguar? Well, because Jaguar is a very sexy car. It's a very stylish car, particularly some of the older models. They were so cool. So if you imagine, if you look here, there's the X and Y dimensions. Well, imagine a Z dimension coming out from the screen towards you. And that one measured, how cool a car is, or how luxury or how exciting a car is. Jaguar would be very much in that dimension. So, you have to look at various aspects. Here's another one. This is a different type of perceptual map, but this looks at a number of vehicles, and actually has another way of the size of the circle actually represents the volume of its sales. We have on the vertical axis the price in thousands of dollars, and then on the y-axis, is it more of a perceived as a luxury vehicle or a high performance vehicle? And they're all positioned relative to each other. If you the one sort of odd one is, if you look at the one in the upper right hand corner, that actually is the Hummer H1. This was actually the first version of the Hummer. It was Hummer. If you're not familiar with the Hummer started out as a military vehicle, replacing the old Jeep. It was a wider wheelbase. It was a much more sturdy vehicle, slightly armored, and basically it's for combat. Well, some people decided they thought that was cool, and they started buying up these Hummers. Obviously, they didn't have the weapons or anything like that. And the Hummer was definitely a performance vehicle. It was not a luxury vehicle. Most they did not have air conditioning or a lot of other things, and that's why they got the H2. That was more of a luxury, moving more towards the luxury end of the scale. So again, this kind of positions the various types of vehicles. Here we see the Lincoln Navigator. That's much more of a luxury vehicle and very popular by the size of the circle. So there's that. And where Land Cruiser, which is in blue at the bottom, is again more towards the performance side, and you see there. Escalade falls right in the middle. It's kind of a little bit of both there. So we also want to look at value propositions. And value proposition can be talked about in many ways. What value does the product provide? But we can also look at it in terms of the level of value that is provided relative to its price. So here we've divided, instead of a typical 4 grid, we're going to do a 9 grid here, but there are not nine value propositions. So on the horizontal, there is the price going from more, the same, to less. And this is comparative to other product offerings. So are we paying them more than we normally pay, paying the same as what we normally pay, or less? Okay. And then the benefits, the same sort of thing. What benefits are we receiving? While you think there are 9 different versions, there are really only 5, because the other 4 just are not workable. What do we have? We have pay more, get more for more. You're paying more. You're paying this is a premium price for a premium product. Okay. We can get more for the same amount of money. That is attractive. Let me get more, but I'll just pay the same. Great. Getting more for paying less. Fantastic. That's a little too good to be true, but it is offered. So I'm always a little leery of people who say you're going to get more for less, and I'll explain why in a minute. The next one is getting the same as you get elsewhere, but paying less. And then, of course, getting less, but paying much less. Okay. The other is things like getting the same for the same. So what? Or getting the same or less for more. That's a loser. So these 5 are really the only ones that are really viable. So let's go through a few examples. Getting more for more. I can give you a few product examples there. Mercedes is kind of obvious. Ritz-Carlton. Ritz-Carlton is a hotel chain. This is where we get the expression ritzy. Oh, so ritzy. Yeah. The Ritz-Carlton is a hotel that is very high luxury. I stayed in one once. Luckily, I wasn't the one paying. I was a guest. And when I stayed there back, and one of those, I think it was back in the 1980s, they were the first ones one of the first to introduce the mini bar in the room, refrigerated mini bar, which I thought was so cool. They are a very high quality, very high service hotel, and as a result, on the expensive side, so it's more for more. Mercedes. Montblanc if you're not familiar with Montblanc is a brand of pen. Now, I do like a good writing instrument. It's one of my things I enjoy when I don't like typical crappy ballpoint pens. I only use them if I have to. I like a pen that the ink flows nicely through it. And the Montblanc pens, I have written with one. They write beautifully. However, they're a little expensive for my taste. A Montblanc pen might cost $300 just for a pen. That seems a bit much. Obviously, this is a high-end luxury product. Haagen-Dazs in the ice cream category is considered super premium. It is the creamiest. I believe it is the creamiest of ice creams. It's dense and it's delicious. And so these are products where you're paying more. They're premium priced, but you get a lot for that. And you might want to position your product in that category, depending upon what it is. Getting more for the same, Lexus might be a good example. And by the same, what you normally pay for a car, it's slightly more expensive than the average car, but it's not as much as a Mercedes. So you're getting more, but not quite as much. Getting the same for less, that's where Walmart fits that perfectly. Same as Best Buy. I have to take out Circuit City. I don't think they exist anymore, but Walmart, everyday low prices, and you're getting similar products that you might get elsewhere. So, and similar with Best Buy. Getting less for much less Um, you know, like some wonderful examples. My favorite here is Motel 6. Motel 6 is not a luxury. It's not a Ritz-Carlton. It's sort of the opposite of Ritz-Carlton. There, it's not a destination motel. It's not you don't. Most people will not stay there at their destination. It is a travel motel. It is a place you stop and sleep at on your way to someplace else. And I remember years ago, I drove my family down to Florida to I was actually visiting a client, and then I was going to take my family to Disney World. And but I couldn't leave until noon because I had a course I was teaching, and then after that we jumped into the car and we headed down. And we drove a long time. I think we didn't stop until 11 o'clock at night, and I was just looking for a place at that point just to sleep. And there was a Motel 6. We checked in, we flopped down on the bed, and the first thing in the morning we got up. There was no special breakfast buffet. There was no swimming pool. There was nothing, that attractive to it. It was a clean bed, clean place to sleep. And that's all I wanted. Didn't want any special amenities, just place to sleep, a nice pillow, nice mattress, sleep, get up, go. And that's, so they're offering less, and they offer for much less. I certainly wouldn't have wanted to waste my money at a Ritz-Carlton or a Hilton just to stop there briefly. I mean, we literally were there for 8 hours. Probably not even that. So Costco, and nothing wrong with Costco, but they don't have the top brands there, but they have lots. So it's a very economical thing. And Southwest Airlines actually was one of the first successful economy airlines. Years ago, airlines were considered high luxury travel. They were, it was like going to a restaurant that just happened to fly. That model has sort of disappeared for the most part, except in maybe first class or business class. Southwest basically said, we'll get you from point A to point B. No drinks, no snacks. Just we're there to get you there. Oh, they did it with a great attitude though. So that was kind of cool. So now actually a lot of other competitors have followed their lead, but because of the squeeze of the airline industry. I mentioned previously more for less. I don't have a lot of great examples of this because there's a lot of pressure. If you're giving more, there's pressure for you to charge more, just to preserve your profitability. It's actually very, very difficult. Or if you're offering it for less, there is this pressure to pull down what you're offering if you're focused on offering it for less. I do have one good example, but it's from long ago. It's actually Home Depot. When Home Depot, those of you should be familiar with it, it's a do-it-yourself hardware store. They have lumber, they have all sorts of tools and home maintenance equipment and supplies. When they first came onto the scene, they were amazing. They actually put two other chains one was called Rickle, the other was called Channel, put them out of business because they did this sort of big warehouse thing. In addition, the people who worked there were actually highly knowledgeable. Many of them were former contractors, carpenters, plumbers, electricians, other types of professionals who I think there had been a recession, so and Home Depot was hiring, so it was a good place for them to go and still stay in their field. And so when you went to Home Depot, not only could you get decently priced supplies, you could also get expert advice from one of their the representatives they had in the orange aprons. Even a couple of years ago, I went to get I had to buy a snowblower. And I was trying to figure out which was the best one, trying to reduce my and my dissonance is, don't want to make a mistake. And and one of the rep said, "You looking for a snowblower?" Okay, and gave me and said he used to work, as with a snowblower clearing for professionally clearing, sidewalks and driveways and stuff. And he said he recommended this one not so much. This brand's a good brand. This one's okay, and gave me some great professional advice. And I've been very happy with the snowblower. Even though the first winter I didn't get to actually use it because we didn't have any snow, or not much snow anyway. So Home Depot would be a more for less, although more recently that it's hard to say that they're actually doing that, because they tried to expand, and also many of those people left, although not all of them. But very, very tough value proposition to maintain. So anyway, value proposition. My question is, what will your value proposition be? Well, relative to more and less or the same, but also in general, what is it that what is the value that you're offering? The value that, Enterprise Rent-A-Car is offering is convenience. So there's that. What will your unique selling proposition be? What is it that one thing that you do that others don't? So you'll need to develop a positioning statement. And a positioning statement summarizes how a firm wants consumers to think of their brand. Some people think of it as a headline. It's not a headline. It's actually an internal statement. What do you want our consumers, or what do you want our customers to feel about our product? And it's kind of a guideline for those who will write advertising copy. So, and it usually goes along the lines of, to our target market with a need, our brand is a concept, whatever that concept is, that has whatever that point of difference is. This is sort of an old positioning statement. To busy professionals, BlackBerry, Blackberries don't exist anymore. It was a wireless connectivity solution that provides a reliable connection to data, people, and resources. Let's think of a new one. Let's say Enterprise Rent-A-Car. To car renters, Enterprise Rent-A-Car is the car rental company that provides convenient service. So that's their unique selling proposition. That's their point of difference. They will come pick you up. I actually have to probably strip out the BlackBerry one and put in the Enterprise one here, but you get my point. You don't have to write it exactly this way, but it has to be clear that this is how you want the consumer to think about your product. Think about what the positioning statements might be for a company like Disney or McDonald's or Apple. What do you think their positioning statements are like? What do they want people to think of them? And it goes for all brands. So, okay. We'll stop here. And you should have, if you have any questions about products, or I'm sorry, about the things we've talked about market segmentation, about market targeting or product positioning, please bring those questions to class. All right, take care.